statements or opinions of its guests, advertisers, or even its viewers. The information contained in this program is not to be confused with medical or legal advice. An appearance on this platform is not necessarily an endorsement, but as always, we encourage you to do your own research. Enjoy the show. Good evening, everyone. And of course, welcome back. That's right. It's time for another very exciting episode of Red Pill News Live. And tonight at 9 p.m., President Trump is going to be delivering an election security, election integrity address from the Oval Office. I will be streaming here live on my channel with my good friend, J.R. Majewski. We're actually going to be simulcasting to his platforms as well. So please join us. We're going to start at 8:45 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We've got a lot to discuss today, not just the upcoming events of the Oval Office address, but also Marco Rubio's resurgence of political left-wing terrorism, ministerial. Also, Trump administration efforts to rein in illegal immigration. Also, the FBI investigating attack on ICE headquarters in Houston, and information about the passage of the Save America Act. Got a very, very strange circumstance in the House of Representatives. So if you guys don't mind, do me a favor, hit that like button, help us out by sharing the show, and then sit back, relax, and of course, grab your popcorn, because we're going to be right back after this.
Science proves that a healthy immune system is the body's first defense against the smallest of ailments to the most catastrophic. Coriolus Versicolor is the most sought-after, all-natural supplement for both humans and pets to help boost the immune system. There are over 400 studies worldwide on its effectiveness in humans, including Sloan Kettering Cancer Center, MD Anderson Cancer Center, and now from the University of Pennsylvania School of Veterinary Medicine. Together, we can help reverse this terrible tide now plaguing your loved ones and give them the immune-boosting supplements that they need.
All right, welcome back. Peace Drive just said check the comments. I left you a link. Zach, we are merging forces. The United States-Israel Futures Act aims to enhance defense cooperation. So yes, I've spoken about this on a number of occasions. I first reported on it over a month ago when they announced it. They say this proposed legislation, officially known as the United States-Israel Framework for Upgraded Technologies, Unified Research, and Enhanced Security Act of 2026, seeks to strengthen bilateral defense ties between the U.S. and Israel. So, yeah, this is an unprecedented move by Congress, and essentially what it's going to be doing is taking the U.S. military and the Israeli military and joining forces in terms of technology and intelligence cooperation. Now, there's a couple of different thoughts I have on it, and I will get into them perhaps a little bit deeper into the show. First of all, I'm not in favor of it, but second of all, there's nothing we can do because Congress is obviously completely controlled by AIPAC, so we have no say in the matter. It is an action of Congress, and I've seen people suggesting that this is Trump's merger of the U.S. and Israeli military. That's not true. This is Congress that's doing this. This is an act of legislation. But second of all, it's not how people are portraying it to be. It's not like the U.S. military is going to be setting up shop with the IDF and we're going to be doing exercises and we're going to be invading countries together. I want you to realize that before Congress forced this, and I think that this is due to the deteriorating view of Israel and the Israeli military in the eyes of the American people. I think that this is Congress essentially trying to tell the American people there's nothing you can do. Israel is our greatest ally, and we're going to prove it to you by merging these different pieces of our military. Now, those things are already basically merged. The president can, at any time, essentially like stop that cooperation under the guise of national security. But it's vague as to what that national security issue could possibly be. From what I've read, it essentially is whatever the president deems it proper to be. So this could also be something that President Trump vetoes when it comes across his desk. I'm not exactly certain. We'll have to see how it goes. But ultimately, there's nothing else that we're going to be able to do about it, certainly other than hoping that President Trump and the administration fix our election system, and then we can elect new members of Congress who are not in favor of merging our military with a foreign military in any respect, no matter how small, no matter how inconsequential, or no matter how much they might say that it's going to benefit the United States. I think that ultimately it's meant to benefit Israel. I don't see how this is really going to benefit the United States. But one final thought is that the United States, in addition to this pact that they're making with Israel, we are already in security and cooperation agreements with most of the nations that are in the Gulf of Arabia, okay, and you know, all of the nations of the Middle East that the Trump administration has made efforts to sort of develop normalized bilateral relations with. We have security agreements with them. And so this is not going to be a situation where Israel is like, haha, we've got you. Now you're going to have to start bombing all of these other countries. It's not going to be like that because we have pre-existing relationships with these other countries. So, you know, basically, it's one of those things that I can't control at this moment. And I think there are a lot of other things that are very, very important. All right. So why isn't the chat moving? The chat is moving. I'm looking at it right now, and I've seen it move on a couple of occasions. So, Jim, I don't know, refresh your screen. Yeah, all right. So let us get into all of the stories that I have, and we will, trust me, touch back on Israel again in just a moment. Okay, so first of all, Ruben Gallego, Eric Swalwell's former best friend, has just been exposed yet again for another sexual incongruous activity that does not match up with his reputation that he puts out as a good old family man, a dedicated father and husband, because apparently he's been having sex with his staff members, and that's obviously highly inappropriate. And that should not really surprise anybody. I mean, he was great friends with Eric Swalwell, but now these new allegations are coming out. And, of course, this might lead to Ruben Gallego finally being forced to give up his position in the House of Representatives. I'm not going to hold my breath, but, you know, it is what it is. So if you'll remember, Eric Swalwell has previously been accused of doing things that were improper with staffers and with women who have come and gone from his office. And now it appears that there are new allegations that are coming forward. Gallego has previously described Eric Swalwell as his best friend in the world. Remember, Eric Swalwell was forced to drop out of Congress and drop out of the California governor's race because multiple people, women, have already come forward and said that they slept with him or they received inappropriate text messages from him or that he was kind of a sex pest towards them. Well, this new report from the New York Post shows that multiple sources have come forward to say that Ruben Gallego also had relationships with two of his female Democrat staffers, both of whom were working for Texas Democrats. Apparently, these were women that the senator admitted the relationships to on at least one occasion, and that source has come forward to speak with the New York Post. But the second source said that they had recently become aware of these sexual encounters, and so they were just corroborating the first source. A third unnamed source has also confirmed these trysts with various Democrat staffers. Now, one of the sources described Gallego's behavior as a, quote, pattern of mistakes and missteps and judgment calls. And what else could there be out there? Well, if you are a man in Washington, D.C., in Congress in 2026, and your best friend is Eric Swalwell, I think that there's probably a lot more out there that they're going to be able to find out about you. And it's only a matter of time before Ruben Gallego is fully exposed for whatever else skeletons are hanging out in his closet. One of these women was in her 20s when Gallego, at 46, began a sexual inappropriate relationship with her. This comes, of course, after the Senate Ethics Committee just recently dismissed a complaint that had been filed by Representative Anna Paulina Luna because she, too, had heard about Gallego's sexual trysts. She alleged that Gallego engaged in campaign finance violations and inappropriate sexual contact with people that were not his wife. Now, the 6-member panel, which was headed by Chairman James Lankford of Oklahoma and vice-chaired by Chris Coons of Delaware, did not find any evidence that Gallego violated federal law or Senate rules. I suppose it is not against the rules to have sex with other people's staffers. It sure does seem like an ethics violation, though. I mean, that's not the kind of thing that you really want, in the people who are leading the nation. But again, look, it's D.C. These people are corrupt as hell. They're selling us up the river. Now, according to an insider, the Ethics Committee apparently did not even ask about these relationships with staffers, even though it was a part of the original ethics complaint. Ethics looked in the wrong places, the source has said, noting that they focused squarely on only what Luna presented to them. I mean, of course, there's no evidence if you don't look. Now, Gallego was asked about this report earlier on Capitol Hill, and instead of denying it, he said, "I'm not going to engage in gossip." Now, that sure does seem like the kind of thing you would say if you were guilty and you did not want people to be able to come back and say, "Hey, guess what? You lied about this." "I'm not going to engage in gossip," he said. "I'm not going to engage in gossip." That's all he said. So, meanwhile, he's also facing a federal probe into campaign finance violations because it was revealed that he had previously used campaign funds to attend various inappropriate inappropriate events, and then also potentially illegal expenses on things that your campaign is not supposed to pay for. That includes things like luxury outings, vacations, trips to Disney World, childcare, which is what Eric Swalwell did as well. He also used campaign funds to buy tickets to the Super Bowl, and he actually took Eric Swalwell with him. If I'm not mistaken, I remember those tickets were like $6,000 a piece. Now, another person familiar with Senator Gallego's spending said that he frequently uses his campaign account as a personal slush fund. They spoke to Politico when asked about this. He's using campaign cash to live a luxury lifestyle. Again, that seems to fit the bill when we're talking about corrupt politicians in Washington, D.C. So now there is also a DOJ investigation also looking into those potential campaign violations. This is based on a whistleblower complaint that came out of California. So I don't think Ruben Gallego is going to be in Congress much longer. Very soon, he's probably going to have to drop out, just like Eric Swalwell did. Now, I should have said something, but we are in a sort of F around, find out portion of the show, and we've got a couple of additional updates on past stories that we've talked about.
See, as you can see, the more you around, the more you're going to find out.
All right, there's really no other way to say it. This former Marine and now former congressional candidate William Upham that wanted President Trump killed because he said he was the Antichrist was arrested yesterday in Florida by the local sheriff. So here is Upham in his dress uniform and then in his fatigues. The fatigues is what he wore when he went on a 6-minute tirade about how President Trump was the Antichrist and he must be killed, in an unhinged rant offering his candidacy for Congress. He was just a write-in candidate, so it wasn't a particularly serious candidacy. But he is medically retired, and I think it's safe to say that his medical retirement may have something to do with his mental state. So he was arrested yesterday by the Jacksonville Sheriff's Office, and inmate records show that he was booked into Duval County Jail late Wednesday night, and he was held on a U.S. Marshal hold with the charge comment listed as threats against the president. Now, it's funny, they list him as a white male. He's a Hispanic, but again, he's a white male. All of the rapists and pedos and people that are from Spanish backgrounds or even South American, Central American backgrounds are all listed as white. I don't know why they do that. That doesn't make any sense. It definitely throws off the metrics when you're trying to figure out what groups of people are committing crimes in the United States. White male, Hispanic male, really, 5'5", 170 pounds, black hair, brown eyes, arrested by the Jacksonville Sheriff's Department. And he had a hearing which was scheduled for 1 p.m. today. Federal charging documents have been obtained, and they do paint a fairly dark picture. The Jacksonville Florida Times-Union was able to get a hold of them. Now, according to the criminal complaint filed by a U.S. Secret Service agent, Upham posted that video recommending viewers work in pairs with semi-automatic rifles like AR-15s and ammunition very effective at piercing body armor. He described shooting patterns that would produce a very high chance of killing the enemy, in this instance, American citizens. In an email to a reporter, Upham allegedly wrote, "I made this video in uniform to declare war against President Trump on behalf of God," because, of course, that's what God wants, is for you to kill the president, William. Okay. "I will kill President Trump at the time that God chooses. Our country must overthrow President Trump by the violent use of force and kill him." Quite the quote. So, Upham used to be a county court prosecutor in Jacksonville. Now, he's no longer currently eligible to practice law in the state of Florida. And this federal charge, 18 U.S.C. 871, for threats against the president is a crime that's going to carry up to 5 years in prison. I'm sure he'll never be able to practice law again. And I'd hope that he doesn't have a family, because then, his wife and his children are going to be left without anybody around to love or to take care of. This is really a situation where nobody wins. And I don't bring any joy in telling you this story, which is why I queued up the next story directly after, because I will bring joy in telling you a little bit more information about the arrest of Caitlin Tracy, the Canadian violent left-wing extremist who was here in the United States illegally in New Jersey and thought that it would be a great idea to physically attack an underage girl over the 4th of July holiday because she was wearing an America 250 shirt and maybe a MAGA hat. Well, it appears that the actual attack was caught on video. So let's see, and you tell me if you think that she deserves to be arrested. Look at that. 2 hits on a young girl who is obviously a child. She's a young girl under the age of 18, and her cuck boyfriend makes no attempt to pull her off of this young girl and stop her from beating her. The hate white North. I love that. The hate white North. Anyways, Caitlin is, again, under arrest. She is awaiting extradition. ICE is not going to allow her to re-enter the United States of America ever. I'm very, very happy about that. Yeah, she's a total see you next Tuesday. Absolutely. All right, now, let's check in with Marco Rubio and the ministerial on the resurgence of political terrorism, wholly focused on left-wing terrorism. Got a couple of great clips from this event. Marco Rubio hosted this event and brought together the ministers and officials of over 60 countries so that collectively they could address the significant and rising international threat of far-left political violence and terrorism. Now, what I was really happy about is that Marco Rubio showed that this is not a new phenomenon. This has been ongoing here in the United States, dating back to like the 1960s and the 1970s. He delivered a fairly direct message about the current state of the world and the threats of left-wing and violent extremists who are pushing for greater international destruction so that they can bring in their unique brand of violence and communist extremism. Now, let me go ahead and play the clip for you. Okay, here we are.
This is a distinctive and unique evil. It has always been driven by a hatred, above all else, a hatred for civilization itself. It is a revolt of the worst against the best, a revolt of the weak and the cowardly against the strong and the good. It is perpetrated by those who cannot build, who cannot create, who cannot achieve great things, and take their revenge upon the world for their own inadequacy by seeking to destroy those who can. This is what radical leftism is. It may wear various different slogans and ideologies across place and time. They can call themselves anti-capitalist or anti-imperialist or communist or anarchist or Marxist, but the fundamental character is always the same. It's always the same. It is a poisonous resentment cloaked in the language of equality and justice and liberation, an overwhelming need to tear down what greater men have built, to wreck what is beautiful and what is right on behalf of people who are only filled with ugliness and have nothing else to offer the world. Through violence and through terror, they once again seek to impose their ugliness on all of us. The old dogma was wrong. The old dogma was wrong. None of this is driven by idealism. It is not utopian. In fact, it is the opposite. One of the criticisms you sometimes hear of communism, for example, is that it sounds good in theory, but it never works in practice.
Doesn't really sound that good in theory. I'm not at all interested in handing over my wealth or my possessions or my hard work to people who would simply rather sit around and expound upon the wonders of how beautiful the world will be if everybody has exactly the same thing. It's been shown time and time again that communism destroys competition. Nobody has any desire to do any better than anybody else or to innovate if they know that ultimately the result is going to be that their hard work is going to be stolen from them and it's going to be distributed equally amongst the commune.
That's actually not true. Communism does not sound good in theory. The world it envisions for all of us is small, flat, gray, leveled of all exception, drained of all that is good and noble in the human soul. The world it envisions is a world without courage, a world without creativity or ambition, a world without heroes or glory or great causes to strive towards, a world without miracles, without myths, without men who rise above the rest to do incredible and extraordinary things. And the world communism envisions is a world without God. For these architects of revolutionary violence, the towering achievement of our civilization, for them, it's an unbearable humiliation, a reminder of what they cannot do, and a reminder of what they cannot be. So they choose instead to destroy. They attack pipelines, they attack railroads, they attack power grids and laboratories, the physical embodied symbols of power and invention and achievement. This is the nature of the terrorism we face today. They despise the West because the West is great.
God is good. Now, the horrible thing about communism is that they're all atheists. And under communism, because there is no God, the state becomes God. And so you must worship the state. You must pay fealty to the state. Now, here in this clip, Marco Rubio takes it back to the Weather Underground, which, is something that when I learned about it for the first time many years ago, I was shocked because we never learned about this in school. And I didn't realize at the time that obviously communists and left-wing radicals had infected the education system here in the United States. So, of course, they never taught us about how they were blowing up buildings. But take a listen to this. Listen to these statistics. From 1971 and 1972, there were about 2,500 bombings on American soil. And over the last 10 years, they've been telling us that the alt-right, right-wing violent extremism is the most dangerous thing to the United States of America. It's always been the left. It's always been the commies. They just were successful in becoming straight, in becoming part of the system. They took over, and that's how they subverted our position.
In one 18-month period between 1971 and 1972, the FBI counted some 2,500 bombings on American soil, a rate of nearly 5 a day. The overwhelming share of that violence came from left-wing extremists Between 1970 and 1980, 93% of terrorist attacks in the West came from the far extremist left. These are numbers that would shock most Americans today because we've been taught to believe that this kind of political violence, it simply doesn't exist or it's being exaggerated. But it does exist, and we're actually underestimating it. And our nations bear the scars to prove it.
So Dockster over on Rumble says they control the narrative. Correction, they controlled the narrative. They have lost control of the narrative, and that is why they are so frightened right now. That's why they're lashing out in the way that they are. That's why they've taken the mask off. Now, we've spoken about this as a tactic before. However, it is now being put into practice. Scott Bessent, of course, was one of the voices at the ministerial, and he spoke about how Treasury is now expanding their efforts to identify these left-wing organizations, which is the NGO industrial complex, and they are shutting off their money, stopping them from being able to fund the type of left-wing violence that we've seen over the last 10 years or so.
Violence requires money, channels through which funding can move, and institutions behind which it can hide. Increasingly, legitimate nonprofit and charitable structures are being exploited as a mechanism to conceal the movement of illicit funds to support political terrorism. For Treasury, the application of our authorities to combat these networks represents the natural evolution of our mission. Through our Office of Foreign Assets Control, the Financial Crimes Enforcement Network, and IRSCI, we have spent decades developing the world's most sophisticated financial counterterrorism capabilities. And now we are mobilizing some of the same tools that we have deployed against terrorists abroad to confront this emerging threat here at home. Like every form of illicit finance, these networks rely on the global financial system. It is our mandate to deny terrorist groups access to those channels. Now, we think of nonprofits and charities as good, altruistic organizations, and most of them are. We think they represent the very best of civil society. Many of them do. But the very qualities that make these institutions worthy of the public's trust can also make them appealing to those who endeavor to exploit them. At President Trump's direction, Treasury is expanding its efforts to identify organizations that abuse charitable and nonprofit structures as vehicles for illicit finance. We are examining where tax-exempt status has been exploited, where charitable entities have become financial conduits for foreign influence activity, and how those entrusted with stewardship of these organizations have instead enabled violence. Where the evidence leads, we will not hesitate to follow. And of course, we will hold these organizations, officers, directors accountable. And just as financial institutions must know their clients, they must know their grantees.
All right, so I know I see it in the chat. Arrest them already. You know, it's one thing for us to be sitting out here on the outside and to have been analyzing all this stuff over the years, and we think we know who the evil people are. We think we know where the money's coming from. We think we know who should actually be arrested. But the truth of the matter is that the arrests, the indictments, the grand juries, they've all got to go through a process. And it's quite obvious that the administration is mobilizing to do just that. Although it may not be happening at the speed with which people want it to happen, I truly do believe that it is happening. Now, Marco Rubio also spoke while he was there about the ongoing left-wing assaults that we're seeing here in the United States of America, the rise of this left-wing violent extremism.
Today we face a new wave of this old evil. Here in the United States, the share of left-wing terrorist attacks and plots has risen to levels not seen in decades. In Germany, far-left violence has jumped by more than 40% in just the last year alone. In Greece, more than 80% of radical violence is now driven by far-left and anarchist actors. These are not abstract statistics. Americans have seen what those numbers mean. An all-out assault on our immigration officers, sniper attacks, explosives, armed ambushes, a transgender shooter opening fire on Catholic elementary school students as they pray, his gun marked with slogans like, "Where is your God now?" A healthcare executive executed in cold blood in the streets, multiple assassination attempts on a sitting president, and the murder of the greatest conservative activist of a generation, a man who happened to also be a husband and the father of 2 young children, shot and killed while speaking to a crowd of students. This is a distinctive and unique evil. It has always been driven by a hatred, above all else, a hatred for civilization itself.
Now, just to further drive the point home that I was making before this clip, for the first time in history, Antifa has been designated both as a domestic and a foreign terrorist organization. For the first time in history, Antifa RICO trials have begun taking place here in the United States. We've had 10, 12 of those people already gone through the process of going to trial. They've been convicted. They've been sentenced. They're going to be spending the rest of their lives in prison. So there are moves that are taking place. And I also want you to realize that given the fact that these people did control the narrative, given the fact that they did control the levers of power, given the fact that they did control the evidence of their own crimes, it's not outside the realm of possibility that these people covered their tracks exceptionally well. We currently have ongoing investigations and subpoenas and actions with Treasury and FinCEN that are specifically targeting many of these money vehicles that have been used to drive all of this activity here in the United States. It's only a matter of time before we start seeing these people start getting rounded up. Now, one final thing I didn't realize, but Scott Bessent last August, when he first came into his position, was also the target of an attempted assassination. I did not know this.
And before I proceed, I'm going to go off script for a minute, which is always dangerous, but I'm going to remind everyone in this room and all the media that I was the subject of an assassination attempt February 2024 by an addled left-wing activist 2 hours after being sworn into my job. So any of you who want to report that this is a fiction and does not exist, be there for the sentencing this August.
Haha, there you go. That person is being sentenced in August, so it is real. Tawanda gifted a cookie, says the GoFundMe was also revoked and funds given back to donators for Caitlin the Canadian. Thank you for that. Boys Blanc, has anyone looked into the fires and anything biological related? It's having huge effects on people here in Northwest Michigan. Something feels different. The smoke you can smell, even taste. I've had to send over half of my employees home. So I believe you're talking about these supposed wildfires in Canada that are blowing smoke across the northeastern portion of the United States. I don't know what is burning, so we honestly have no way to know what's actually in that smoke. I mean, is it buildings? Is it homes? Is it just fire that is raging through forests? Yeah, I have hardly seen any sort of reporting on it other than to see that there is smoke that is hitting the United States. I'm sorry to hear that. Judy the Lady Pug, thank you for the cookie. Trump1 says, love y'all. Gotta lurk, though. Looking forward to President Trump tonight. Hopefully we'll see you here at 8:45 p.m. Hogleg71, thank you for the can and the cookie. Also, big happy birthday to Tony. It's Tony, man. He says, hey, Zach, holy crap, I'm 65 today. Not to worry because I've been feeling really great. Thank you, and Lisa, the incredible folks in the best chat on Rumble. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Tony, I'm glad to hear that. You are doing well, man, and continue to keep moving forward. And happy birthday once again. Principled Enigma says, your work is impeccable, bro. When you get a chance after the show, answer my X chat to you. Thank you very much. I will do so. Lee Walden says, ahoy, Zach and Miss Lisa. Ever feel like the gift of the promise of America is still within reach? Absolutely. I always have. Our warriors are at the ready. We the people will prevail. SpaceX launch on the pad. Stay the course. Wicked, wicked cool. Okay. Now, let's talk a little bit about immigration. The Trump administration has announced that they are currently investigating 75 American truck driving schools that are suspected of helping non-citizens obtain their CDLs. Now, the Department of Homeland Security Investigations and the Department of Transportation have announced a joint operation, an investigation into the 75 entry-level commercial truck driving schools. These are spaced all across the country, and they are suspected of taking part in fraudulently helping these non-citizen drivers to qualify. Safety experts estimate as many as 130,000 illegal alien truck drivers may be operating here in the United States right now, and tens of thousands are believed to have already obtained their licenses through illegitimate means. Many of these truck driving schools are also fronts as well. During the course of all of these investigations looking into fraudulent businesses and seeing where SBA money is going, what you'll find is that there are groups of these schools that might have different LLCs or different company names, and depending on whether or not one of them gets into trouble, they will just swap everything over to the other company name. And oftentimes they are also owned by people who are here in this country from other countries as well, either legally or illegally. Now, Bill Malugin reported earlier today that the DHS and the DOT were announcing this 75 entry-level school investigation. And these fraudulent companies are looking to help these illegal aliens qualify for their CDLs. The agencies are partnering together to investigate them. HSI and DOT have already begun visiting some of these schools around the country so that they can probe them, look into their records, and begin the process of shutting them down. Some of the schools are suspected of falsifying training records, providing improper certifications, and ultimately failing to properly train these drivers. Now, statements via the DHS and Secretary Markwayne Mullin have stated that too many American lives have been lost in completely avoidable accidents because illegal aliens have been granted commercial driver's licenses to drive trucks and 18-wheelers on America's roads. As you'll know, DOT has already set for the seizure of all of those illegal alien driver's licenses, but unfortunately, it's the states that are granting the driver's licenses. So the people who are still on the roads are people who have received their licenses from states like California or Wisconsin or Pennsylvania. DHS law enforcement is right now partnering with the Department of Transportation so that we can ultimately eliminate this fraud, this CDL fraud, and strengthen the integrity of the CDL system and investigate commercial driver's license schools throughout the country. It's a whole-of-government approach to keep America's roads safe. Now, obviously, this coincides directly with the announcement we got from President Trump yesterday. With all of these illegal aliens losing their licenses, we now have an opportunity to put American truck drivers back on the road. And if you are a military veteran and you were a driver of some of these heavy equipment or trucks while you were in service, then you will immediately qualify for your CDL, and you can perhaps get out there and begin working. Secretary of Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy also added, U.S. DOT has spent the last year rooting out bad actors from our trucking industry. So although this is being announced right now, this is not a new effort. This is something that's been going on for quite some time. And because we're hearing about it, it's just that they're finally ready to admit that this is what they've been doing. We've knocked over 24,000 drivers off our roads for failing to speak English, forced states to cancel over 28,000 licenses illegally issued to foreign drivers, and purged over 9,500 unqualified training schools from our FMCSA registry. DHS will be a force multiplier of our efforts to clean up American roads. President Donald Trump is using every lever at his disposal to ensure the safety of American families. Also followed up with a statement on X, fraudsters can run, but they can't drive. If you cheat the system by giving illegal aliens commercial driver's licenses, we will find you and you will pay a heavy price. Our DHS Gov partnership is a massive force multiplier as we shut down these corrupt operations. President Trump is using every lever to clean up Americans' roads. So this is good news, but of course, it's too little too late for the Americans who have already lost their lives. Now, we also have new details coming from the administration on how we can better make sure that certain people may have a more difficult time staying in our country if they are coming from someplace else. Now, as we have seen, typically what some of these foreigners will do is come here on a student visa. What I wasn't aware of is that those student visas did not have any specific time length under which those people could live here. So they would come here, they would set up shop, they would go to college, they would get a job, and then they would be here for so long, they would then go apply for a green card, and then they would get some sort of permanent residency. But foreign students have been coming into the United States with this unspecified term on their visas for so long that thousands of them have been able to abuse the system and to simply become forever students, which allows them to perpetually enroll in courses so that they can avoid leaving the nation. As long as they are taking some class of some type, they have met the conditions of their visa. Now, by implementing clear, finite limits on these visas, the United States is reclaiming its ability to properly screen, vet, and monitor individuals within our borders. So they come here for a specific degree. Well, you've got 4 years under which you can get that degree. Maybe they make them reapply every single year so that they can prove they are still enrolled and still in good standing with whatever university that they're going to. But this new law, this new rule rather, is going to cap the length of time that visas will be able to be granted, 4 years at a maximum. And those holders will have to apply for extensions to stay any longer if they hope to remain in our country for a reason that is valid. On top of that, President Trump has also now issued a ruling that welfare will be a factor in approving immigration status. So now they are advising immigration officers to begin considering some immigrants' use of things like Medicaid, food stamps, housing assistance when deciding on whether or not to approve green card applications. Now, of course, they are unable to use those things going into the future. But of course, the Biden administration had allowed them to use all of those things, gaining access to every single type of welfare and social safety net that we had here for American citizens. So if those people are attempting to get permanent residency or to become citizens of the United States, this new rule is now going to take a look at whether or not they were getting welfare before. This new rule will largely reverse the Biden-era policy that pretty much limited the government's public charge review to cash welfare and long-term institutional care. Immigration officers are now allowed to weigh whether or not an applicant's use of certain public benefits has been a factor in their decision to come to the United States. They will look at factors as well, like age, health, income, education, and work history. If they are coming here and they have no job, well, then I don't think they should be able to stay. If they're coming here and they don't have the ability to support themselves, they definitely should not be able to stay. If they're coming here so that they can then get their families brought in on chain migration or something like that, they should not be able to stay. If they come here and they're sick, elderly, infirmed, and they don't have medical care, if they don't have insurance, well, then definitely they should not be able to stay. I think the only people who should be coming to the United States are people of a moderate to successful means and wealth, because those people are going to be able to support themselves, and the high likelihood that they're going to perhaps invest or start a company or do something to help better not only their own lives, but the lives of Americans around which they are placing themselves, then that certainly needs to be the primary consideration. So the Department of Homeland Security says this change is going to restore the principle that immigrants should be able to support themselves without relying on taxpayers. I can't believe that we ever allowed people to come here and have us foot the bill for them ever, but it definitely happened. The rule is going to be taking effect next week, and it will affect roughly 588,000 people that are applying for green cards every single year. This is something that we definitely should have done previously. Now, here, let's go ahead and just take a listen to this brief clip about it, because people who are waiting for green cards right now are going to be affected.
Enormous change in U.S. immigration policy tonight. The Trump administration says any non-citizens in the country who have applied for a green card must leave the country indefinitely, even if here legally, and regardless of whether they have a spouse or children. Then they have to wait for their green card application to be processed outside of the country. We'll follow up on that. Meantime, American...
So I see DeJuice over on YouTube says, why won't they let us hype Zak's video? Pathetic. Because I am still a redheaded stepchild on YouTube. I'm not monetized on YouTube. Most of the people who are still subscribed to the channel don't get notifications or anything like that. So yeah, I mean, they don't really want me on YouTube. I am actually going to apply for monetization again. I'm not going to put it out there that they're not going to allow me to, but I'm not anticipating them doing that. Perhaps if they do allow monetization, you'll be able to hype a video in the future. That would be helpful if they did, though. Okay, also, I need to say thank you so much to Freya and Boys. The Boundary Waters area is on fire, Zach. Okay, I'm not familiar with the Boundary Waters area, but we'll take a look at it for tomorrow. Trey Raider watched my house get wiped out by the flood last night here in Uvalde. Lost both vehicles and most of my stuff. I wasn't the worst, so please pray for my community. Okay, you're in Uvalde? I thought you were in Minnesota. Okay, I had no idea that there was a flood, but Freya, definitely praying for you, brother, and that's awful. Hopefully you were insured so that you can get some stuff back. I like fish. They did kick me off YouTube back before the 2020 election, but they let me back on YouTube late last year, I think. So we've been broadcasting to YouTube since they let me back on. The Nun Report, thank you so much for rating the stream. I really do appreciate you. Yeah, so Mike Jones, yeah, I won't be able to have memberships on YouTube until they remonetize me. But, you know, again, I haven't been monetized since, 2019. They took my monetization away in March of 2019. So I doubt that they will let me, but we'll see. We'll see what happens. Okay, so one more piece that we have on immigration. The FBI is currently investigating gunshots that were fired at the ICE headquarters in Phoenix, Arizona. There appears to be 4 bullets that were shot into the window of that ICE facility. This actually happened on July 14th, just one day after that shooting that took place with ICE, who were attempting to pull that illegal alien over in Maine. The good news is that nobody was injured in this shooting, but the FBI has, of course, asked people to contact them if they have any information at all about, oh, not you, Trey Raider. Is Trey Raider in the chat? I didn't see that message. Okay, so we're praying for Trey Raider. Trey Raider, I'm sorry to hear that your stuff was washed away, and everybody in your community who might be dealing with this, but definitely we'll be praying for you, buddy. Thank you for clarifying, Freya. Okay, so yeah, just a couple of cowardly shots into the window. This could have easily been a drive-by or something like that. But yeah, if the FBI field office says that if you saw anything specific or suspicious in the North Central Avenue on Tuesday the 14th, if you have any information, then please reach out to us. And they are obviously keen to arrest somebody for this. I'm certain this is in response to the ICE shootings that took place. Remember the crystal meth addict, the father from Houston, who just happened to be a crystal meth addict and an illegal alien, and the guy from Maine was in Colombia. Excuse me, the guy from Colombia was in Maine, and then there was a 28-year-old illegal alien that was fleeing in my neck of the woods in St. Augustine. I actually heard about this, and I totally forgot to mention it. He was running from ICE, and he ran out into traffic, and he got splattered by a semi-truck when he ran out into traffic, and he did not survive. Thank God ICE didn't have to take care of him there, but I feel bad for the truck driver. I mean, he's going to have to get his grill fixed and all of that. I mean, besides the obvious of, the trauma of watching you run over somebody. That's terrible. Okay. Now, all right. Now, before we talk about the situation with Alex Brusewitz, I do want to please ask everybody one more time to hit that like button, help us out by sharing the show. And I have a message from a sponsor over here on Rumble. Allow me, if you will, please, to indulge 60 seconds just to shout out a brand that I recently did an interview with. It's Emerald Med. If you guys did not get a chance to check that out, please go watch the interview that I did with Nate. He's a great guy. If you haven't listened to it, this is definitely something that I would encourage you to see. We did a podcast called How Mitch McConnell Created, Then Destroyed American Hemp and CBD. Basically, it explains how Americans are losing a health war right now to pharmaceutical lobbyists. Americans officially are still fighting that war, but they lose it on November 12th of this year. Until then, you still have the chance to fight. You can call your senators and your congressmen, and please ask them to overturn these new laws. Emerald Med makes quite a few products, and that includes CBD products that are made from hemp. With their CBD items, instead of just using one hemp crop for a low-quality product, they actually use 3 different hemp crops because there is no one single strain that contains every compound that they want to provide to their customers. They use a complex blend of raw extracts when they make those products, and it preserves dozens of minor compounds, trace minerals, and micronutrients that are typically going to be lost in like a heat press or something like that. Here's an example. A batch of oil that they just made has got 6 raw batches of hemp extract blended into it. Instead of just the 1 to 10 compounds, you're going to have over 50 compounds in that oil. And of course, nothing is a cure-all, but it is worth a try. So maybe they can help you feel a little bit better, 30, 60, 80% better. Maybe it's enough to help support you sleeping better, getting more rest. Maybe it just gives you a few hours a day of not feeling awful. Or maybe it's enough to be able to make you do things that you used to be able to do, and for the last couple of years, you simply haven't been able to get up to it. But they also are celebrating America's 250th birthday. And you can click that link below or scan the QR code that you see on screen. If you want to give them a try, they will also give you a discount. Also, check out that podcast interview that we did just a couple of days ago. It's on all of my channels. There is also the code REDPILL that you can use to get an additional 30% off when you go through the link that you're going to see under the video. So thanks again to Nate, and thank you very much to Emerald Med. They actually sent me some stuff, and I forgot to bring it out here, but I have their Emerald Med CBD balm that I use for my back and for my neck, and they sent me some CBD gummies that I'm actually going to be trying for the first time tonight. Thanks again, Nate, and thank you for supporting the show. Okay, so I don't know if you guys were here when I addressed my Congressman Randy Fine. So Randy Fine is my congressman. Dan Bilzerian is running against him. I don't care for Dan Bilzerian. I think he's kind of a carnival barker, kind of a I don't know. He's too out there on a lot of the stuff that he does for me. But Randy Fine, I don't care for Randy Fine personally. He has posted some things online like celebrating the deaths of Palestinian children. I think that that's totally out of line. Like, I would never celebrate the deaths of any children in any conflict zone. I think that was, just totally disgusting. He is right now my Republican congressman, and I had mentioned my distaste for him, and somebody in the chat had said, Zach, I'm conflicted here because I like you, but I also like Randy Fine. Randy's been totally America first. And I said, well, let me tell you, because he's my congressman, as long as he supports President Trump and he is a reliable yes vote, I really don't have much to say about him politically. However, if he starts voting against President Trump, well, then that's when he definitely becomes a problem. Now, recently, because of Alex Brucewitz's efforts online to expose the IDF and Mossad takeover of Salem Media through Brad Parscale, apparently Randy Fine has taken issue with that. Now, I'm sure you'll remember that I talked a little bit about this dust-up that's taking place on Twitter the other day. Alex Brucewitz has been exposing the FARA filings that Brad Parscale and his organization Clock Tower Media have recently filed, but it actually turns out that this has been ongoing for like the last 3 years, and apparently Brad Parscale and Clock Tower only just filed their FARA registrations last year, which means that they were operating as a foreign agent for 2 years, it would appear. So Alex asked the question, could you please explain to the American people exactly what services you are providing? Your contract states that you will integrate narrative messaging into Salem Media properties. What does that mean? It also commits you to delivering a minimum of 5,000 pieces of creative content each month and generating at least 50 million views on that content. What is an example of the content being produced? Additionally, how much have you been paid in total? Reports indicate that figure exceeds $45 million, which would make this the largest contract in the history of FARA. He is the best paid foreign agent of another country. That's particularly striking given that you have no prior lobbying experience, no relationship with the president, and no meaningful access in Washington, D.C. So what exactly are they paying you for? Well, I think it's obvious that they are paying for positive coverage of Israel on Salem media shows. Now, this was also exposed in a Time magazine article, and that was, kind of interesting because it's really gaining a lot of momentum with people discussing this. It's a problem for me that any country is buying the opinions of so-called conservative influencers and media personalities here in the United States. I don't care if it's Israel. I don't care if it's Qatar. I don't care if it's Colombia. I don't care if it's Brazil. I personally do not like that we have any other nations that are inserting their opinions into the American cultural landscape, and then Americans hear these people talk and they think that they are getting an honest opinion when actually it's a $45 million opinion. And we've talked about the $7,000 club before. Let's talk about the $45 million club, which is why I always love to say that I am 100% viewer financed. I do not have any foreign companies or nations that are paying me to say anything to you guys here. All opinions are my own. Now, when J.D. Vance appeared on Joe Rogan's podcast, he actually brought up this article in Time and this Israeli influencer-funded digital media network that people are starting to understand is a major problem.
But I definitely think you have seen this very discreet, extremely well-funded campaign to try to derail the negotiation and try to derail the deal. And, there's this Time article that came out yesterday. A friend sent it to me. It's like worth reading because it lists a bunch of people who have quite literally been paid by a former Trump campaign person who was himself paid by certain elements within the Israeli government. And those people are attacking me viciously for quite literally trying to accomplish the negotiation objective that the president set for the country. So
what is their position? Like, are they attacking you how?
Oh, it's social media posts. It's, they're leaking to reporters. They're attacking me obsessively, saying that we should not be negotiating with Iran. We should just keep the military campaign going indefinitely. And that is their explicit position. And coming after me saying that, people have come after me and say that I'm influenced by Qatar, that I'm influenced by foreign governments, that, I take my marching orders from Tucker Carlson. And there's just so much bullshit out there when what I'm actually trying to do is accomplish what the President of the United States told me to accomplish, which is a settlement of this that accomplishes our objectives. Iran doesn't have a nuclear weapon. We have the free flow of oil and gas. And like, I should be clear, I don't actually mind. I don't mind that let's say certain elements of the Israeli government want to criticize the deal or have disagreements about the deal. I don't even mind an effort to try to influence, foreign governments try to influence the United States all the time. Israel does it, other countries do it. It's just sort of the nature of the beast. What bothers me is actually when Americans meaning American leadership, allows that influence to affect their judgment and to affect what they are advocating for. That's what really bothers me. People are always going to try to influence the United States of America, whether they're allies of ours or whether they're enemies of ours. But again, when I open up the pages of Time magazine and I see that there's a literal foreign influence campaign being funded to tank the very deal that I was pursuing, and oh, by the way, many of the people who were receiving that money were actually attacking me in completely dishonest ways, my response to that is, well, go to hell. I'm going to do what I have to do for the American people. I represent Americans first.
So how does this tie back into Randy Fine? It's what J.D. Vance said right there. It's when American politicians, policymakers allow what's good for another country to influence their decisions here in the United States. I think that this ties directly into what we started the show with, this security agreement between the United States and the Israeli military. But it happens that Randy Fine is apparently pressuring the Trump administration over Alex Brucewitz's comments exposing what Salem Media and Brad Parscale have been doing with this $45 million. If you know who is on Salem Media, you can go look at Twitter and you can see that those were all of the people who were trashing President Trump and J.D. Vance for making this deal with Iran. Now, this is also now being talked about in the Wall Street Journal. They also just reported that Israel is funneling these millions of dollars to Brad Parscale in order to help shape American public opinion regarding their interests in Iran. Israel has designated hundreds of millions of dollars to shore up support for the war and improve its image around the world with a $45 million lobbying contract to Brad Parscale. Alex says, I believe this is the single largest FARA contract in history, yet there is no transparency regarding how Brad is allocating that money. The initial draft contract on the FARA website states that he will integrate narrative messaging into Salem Media properties and promises to produce all of that content that we talked about before. Are those still the deliverables? So Randy Fine voted no on the Save America Act, Florida for Trump. This is where it comes in. Now, if I only have one choice to vote for Randy Fine in the general election, then I'll vote for him. Okay, I'm gonna grin and bear it, grit my teeth and bear it. But Randy Fine has now told the Trump administration that he will vote no on everything until Trump fires Alex Brucewitz. Okay, and why do you think Randy Fine is doing that? It's because Alex Brucewitz is calling out the Israeli influence in American media circles, and this is right here. Randy Fine has told White House officials he will vote against every rule on the floor until Trump fires Alex Brucewitz, one of his outside advisors. Fine and Brucewitz, who does not hold any official position in the White House but does have the president's ear, have been fighting since Brucewitz's appearance on Tucker Carlson's podcast 2 weeks ago. Fine hates Tucker Carlson. Fine was the lone Republican who voted against the rule this week, which in part attached the Save America Act to a bill. So this was the attachment of the Save America Act to the NDAA, the funding for the military. This is just one of many different votes where the Save America Act will be attached to every single bill that gets sent over to the Senate. But Fine's demand is obviously probably not going to happen, which means that he's going to continue to vote no on everything that is what President Trump wants. Again, Fine is not voting in the interest of America. He's voting in the interest of Israel because it's Israel that is being exposed for funneling money into these circles to get these people to say what they want them to. They are buying PR time with the dollars. And do you think when these people go on the air that they're saying this message is brought to you by the Mossad? No, they're going to act like it is their opinion. And that's how they feel, and that's how people should think that are listening to them. So I think this is a bad move by Randy Fine. Do I think it's going to lose him the election? No, I don't think it's going to lose him the election, but it definitely might make some people not vote for him in the primary that otherwise may have. Again, as long as Randy Fine is voting for the Trump agenda and for making America great again, I don't think he's got anything to worry about. But I think that him trying to exert pressure on the Trump administration on behalf of Israeli interests is the wrong move. So there we go. Okay. Now, the good news is, even without Randy Fine voting for that rule, the House was successfully able to attach the Save America Act to that national security bill. Now, there were two Republican no votes. There was a nay, and then there was two people who did not vote. I don't know if Randy Fine was among those two people who did not vote, but I can tell you that the one person who was a Republican that voted against it was Thomas Massie. I was not particularly surprised to see that. So, again, this is merely ceremonial until it gets into the Senate and the Senate makes the decision on whether or not they're going to force the voting on the Save America Act provisions with whatever bills they have. But Anna Paulina Luna and Mike Johnson are successfully attaching it to every single bill that gets sent over. So every single bill is going to present the Senate with a new opportunity to either get the Save America Act provisions passed or to once again strip them out. We need a citizenship proof when people vote. We need voter ID when people vote. Is that the end-all, be-all of fixing the elections? Absolutely not. But it's a baseline of where we need to begin so that if we have people that are voting in our elections, we can 100% say they are not only citizens, but the person who cast the ballot is the person they said they were. Now, what's interesting is that, of course, we have the Senate parliamentarian battle. John Thune and others in the Senate will tell you that, oh, we can't do it because the parliamentarians said no. Well, Senator Mike Lee broke down exactly what has to happen when it comes to the Senate parliamentarian. I fully expect her to obstruct the Save America Act and reconciliation. She's already done that on one occasion before. And after she said no because it doesn't pass the Byrd rule, John Thune backed down like a scared little dog with his tail between his legs, and he said, oh, we're never going to be able to get it passed. Tom Tillis has come out once again and said, oh, it's dead in the water. We're never going to be able to get it passed. All of these people in the Senate who are either bought and paid for by lobbying interests or deep state interests, they are not supporting it. Now, it is entirely possible that we could have this passed through reconciliation with a simple majority vote, meaning 50 senators and J.D. Vance. But now we don't have Lindsey Graham, so I don't know how everybody would be voting. They have not taken a roll recently to get an idea of who would be voting for it if they did it in this way. But as it stands right now, John Thune apparently still seems to not be willing to do that. However, it is possible. Let's go ahead and listen to Based Mike Lee, and he will tell us why the Senate parliamentarian is a dead end.
One of the arguments you're going to hear over and over again is we've got to protect the parliamentarian. The parliamentarians' rulings have to be sacrosanct. They can't be overturned. Look, nobody's calling for the parliamentarians' rulings to be overturned. Why? Because the parliamentarian doesn't rule. She lacks that power. Only the presiding officer rules. The parliamentarian merely offers advice. The presiding officer, whether that's the Vice President of the United States, the President pro tem, or the acting President pro tem, meaning a senator from the majority party who is assigned at regular intervals to fill in the absence of the Vice President, it's the presiding officer who makes the ruling.
Now, keeping that in mind, let's say that John Thune does send everybody to recess and never takes up the Save America bill. If they had a small group of senators to create a small majority and they passed it through the reconciliation process, it would only be a majority of who is actually there. So they have 4 senators that are on hand with the Senate President pro tem presiding, just as John Thune had them do every single time they went to recess so that they could gavel in for 2 minutes at a time and stop President Trump from getting recess appointments through, then theoretically they could do it with just a couple of votes, a handful of votes. And there would be nothing that could be said about it. And of course, the parliamentarian wouldn't be there anyways, and they'd just be able to skate it right past. We also have the opportunity for J.D. Vance, and I believe he knows this, J.D. Vance to come in and take control of the Senate from John Thune and say, you know what, you're a cuck. You're not doing what the president needs you to do and what the American people need you to do. So I'm going to be the one to rally these votes, and we're going to go ahead and get this through.
It's then up to the Senate to either sustain or overturn that ruling. In most contexts, it takes a simple majority vote to overturn the ruling of the chair. In budget reconciliation, it takes 60 votes, so the math changes. But regardless, look, there is nothing sacred about the rule of the Senate parliamentarian. Nobody elected the Senate parliamentarian. The Senate parliamentarian occupies no constitutional post in our system of government. So don't believe those who say that you've got to protect the parliamentarian at all costs. It's not her vote that matters. She doesn't have a vote. It's the ruling of the presiding officer that matters.
You know, you typically don't get to leave your job until you get the work finished, right? We should do the same thing. We're back in D.C. We need to pass the Save America Act. And if we don't, no August recess.
Yeah, no August recess. There is no other job you can have in this country where you fail upwards so spectacularly, where you don't actually do your job, where there are no metrics of success, and yet you still continue to get your paycheck and your medical benefits paid for, and all of your vacation time only in the Senate, only in the House. It is disgusting. Frankly, it's disgusting. Thank you so much to Mr. Spliff of Cannabis. Thank you for the cookie. Thank you, Sean Joe, for 2 cookies. Thank you to No Thanks Joe for a cookie, who says, thanks for all your hard work, Zach and Lisa. God bless, be safe all. Thank you for that. Thank you to Sean Joe for 2 more cookies. Thank you to Filter Dog for a can. Media Matters has made it a point to get Zach. They have. Why? Is there a new Media Matters article about me? Yeah, okay. I haven't seen them write about me in a couple of years. Filter Dog says, JD said, is the Save America Act was passed today. It could not be implemented by November. Did he say that? Because it's my understanding that they have until like August 8th to pass it and implement it by November. I don't know. I'm really standing on the rug hoping that President Trump tonight during his Oval Office address is going to lay out some solution which will allow us to secure the elections for this upcoming November midterm. Thank you to Emerald Dragon 1333, who says, Red Pill News Live, not brought to you by Mossad. Hey, Zach, good to see you. Principal Enigma, Thune is conflicted because of his only illegal alien comforting problem. Yeah, he definitely is a little too comfy with the illegal aliens. All right, now, let us keep with the theme of election security. Here, we have a diagram that has been placed out. Massive election corruption report of problems we are having in the United States. 824 findings across 800 pages. Also, open cases against people who have committed acts of election fraud here in the United States. This report is called An Attack Upon U.S. Critical Infrastructure, and it's all to do with the 2020 election corruption we have been experiencing. It provides a list of 18 prioritized and recommended election investigations, along with 8 search warrants. Entities included would be Runback Election Services, those are the people who print the ballots in Arizona and Georgia, Elections Group LLC, the Office of the Georgia Secretary of State, Tyler Technologies, the Associated Press, and many others. All assertions that are drawn in this report, because it is a report created by a private group, are drawn from forensic analyses, sworn legislative testimony, court filings, IG investigations, vendor invoices, open source intelligence, government communications that have been gathered through litigation, FOIA requests, things like that. So the full report itself is in 9 sections, and then after those 9 sections, they have Appendix A, which provides all of these detailed findings and the sources for the findings on which they drew their conclusions. There is also a short executive summary that you can reference as well. So all of this evidence seen in this report shows how President Trump's assertions that our elections can be stolen actually is a lot more than simply a baseless conspiracy theory. This new report details 824 findings bearing directly on the security of the 2020 election. It stands to reason you could extrapolate that out to the 2022 and now the 2026 election, and it covers the effects on 12 U.S. states and the activity from 9 different nations. Perhaps this will be something that President Trump draws from when he speaks to us from the Oval Office tonight. Now, out of these findings, 533 are established facts, 155 are disputed facts, and 116 are reasonable analytically supported inferences. If you'll give me just a moment, I need to turn off my sign behind me because it keeps messing with the ISO on my camera. Okay, there we go. Neon sign, turn it off. Okay, there we go. All right, so Patrick Kolbeck, who was a politician in Michigan, and since that time he's been a huge proponent of election integrity. He's the primary author, and he's also the COO of the Election Crime Bureau. When releasing this report, he says this report is proof that the narrative, quote, there is no evidence of election fraud, is itself a deliberate fraud. As I think anybody who watches this show would know, every single time we can talk about the evidence of election fraud, whether it's in Michigan, California, Wisconsin, Georgia, Pennsylvania, Arizona, we are going to do it. At this point, there is so much evidence of election fraud, not only from 2020, but going forward, that if you say there is no evidence of election fraud, it's obvious that you are not a serious person. And more than likely, you are a member of the deep state yourself. So the report is organized into 10 converging vectors, all of them proving the malfeasance that is occurring in nearly every single aspect of our election system. Back in January of 2017, our elections were deemed critical infrastructure by the by the Trump administration. There are one of the 16 sectors where physical and virtual assets are so vital to our nation and our security that if they were to be incapacitated or destroyed, that would obviously have a debilitating impact on national security, economic security, public health, and safety. This is one of the reasons why I've suggested that tonight, using the guise of critical infrastructure and national security, President Trump could declare a national security emergency and thereby take control of the critical election infrastructure, thereby ensuring that methods of cheating could not be used in the upcoming midterm. Patrick Colbeck also said this report has previously been shared with numerous DOJ and elected officials. Again, sort of leaning into the possibility that maybe President Trump and the administration could be drawing conclusions that they plan to present tonight directly from this. Certainly, I believe that they're going to be drawing conclusions from things that we've spoken about in the past related to China's efforts to influence our elections. So the various findings in this report detail things that you are going to find very familiar. Remote access of electronic voting systems. Live absentee ballot processing has previously been remotely taken over. The election management system in the Fulton County election back in October of 2020, there was a report that the computers for absentee ballot processing were remotely accessed. First of all, the remote access was not supposed to be a feature that was even available on those machines. We've obviously shown since that time that it was, and clearly it was remotely accessed. The remote party that accessed Fulton County was able to control and both delete data. Emails have shown that this incident was documented by the chief investigator of the Georgia Secretary of State Investigations Division. But of course, because it was the deep state that was controlling the elections and that investigation, there was never a criminal referral that followed. In the nearly 800 pages of this report detailing the foundations to justify rapid federal and state investigations, you can see there is a supply of evidentiary basis for identifying, prosecuting, and hopefully in the future deterring anyone who may have been responsible for these irregularities we've had in the past. There has been an abject failure in the United States of America at the state, federal, and very smallest local levels to respond to what have been clear pieces of evidence about the manipulations of our elections and remote attacks and repetitious remote attacks that have jeopardized our government and our way of life. The report also provides key takeaways, dozens of them, important observations, things like the machines themselves being produced from Chinese components. I'm sure everybody here is aware that one of China's goals has been to infiltrate electronics. There have been a number of different pieces of critical infrastructure that the Trump administration previously shut down and took offline because of the electronic infiltration of the Chinese Communist Party. The data centers that were previously not admitted to exist. The code being maintained in Serbia on Dominion machines. Poll worker files living on servers in Beijing. I'm sure you guys remember a couple of years ago, I did a big report on that. The company that was running those servers was based out of Lansing, Michigan. CIA analysts knew about all of this. This is another thing I think President Trump is going to be talking about tonight. The CIA was aware of all of this. They declined to report on Chinese interference in writing because they didn't want the Trump administration to know about it. They didn't want it on the record. They were relatively certain that if Trump or anybody else in his administration knew about this, well, then they would probably shut down elections. Now, people from Iran were charged. There was obviously some type of interference that took place with Iran. There was a sophisticated email campaign that went out where they pretended to be both members of the Proud Boys and members of radical left-wing elements. But the influence, I believe, of China was far greater than any influence that Iran may have effectuated. And let's be honest. I mean, I talked about the Israeli influence before this because $45 million buys you a lot here in the United States. Don't forget, we spoke about the ECC this week. President Trump firing those last remaining Democrat members of the election board. They were the ones that were supposed to be certifying the election equipment, and the certifications actually never took place. They lied and said that they were, but then it turns out that they absolutely were not for several years. And in every single decisive battleground state around the country where we saw the same types of behaviors in terms of ballots being injected into the system, officials certifying results despite the fact that there were missing records, statutory violations, mathematical improbabilities, impossibilities in the way that ballots were coming in, canvassers operating under duress, lack of transparency in terms of chain of custody, sometimes no chain of custody even existing. All of these things on their own should be enough to shut down the election system as it exists right now. However, we continue to operate in this highly insecure environment. They have consistently told us that despite every bit of evidence that we find related to elections being insecure, we don't even have standing to challenge any of these things. Oftentimes, the candidates don't have standing to challenge these things because they've taken over the courts. They have infected these people with the lie that our elections are secure. Nothing is happening. Everything is cool. Business as usual. Continue to move forward. It's totally natural to have all ballots for one candidate coming in every single time that you check a batch. It's totally normal to have tens of thousands of ballots popping up in the middle of the night. They have rigged this election so completely that the only thing that's going to stop it, in my mind, is President Trump and the administration stepping in and taking dramatic and drastic measures. Now, on that note, we are having reports that are being produced all around the media landscape suggesting that the evidence that we spoke about several months ago that I just mentioned, China having a major role in meddling in U.S. elections during the 2020 election, this is going to be a focal point of President Trump's speech. Remember, current CIA Director John Ratcliffe, at the tail end of the 2020 administration, when he was the Director of National Intelligence, or maybe he was the National Security Advisor, that's what it was, he came forward and said that, yes, there was meddling by China, but the CIA covered it up. The CIA never took any issue with it. They never took any efforts to stop it from taking place. And in that time, we've seen Chinese printing presses printing out American ballots. We've had all of those driver's licenses that were fake, that were produced by the Chinese government for fake people to get registered to vote. We've seen just like copious amounts of evidence showing that China had a much bigger role in trying to influence the U.S. election than Russia ever did, or than Iran ever did as well. So as you may remember, during President Trump's speech tonight, we expect there to be some heavy hitters from the intel and legal community. That's going to be CIA Director John Ratcliffe, Acting DNI Bill Pulte, DHS Secretary Chief Mark Wayne Mullen, and FBI Director Kash Patel. No word on whether or not Todd Blanche is going to be there. But the president is expected to unveil this evidence that we've already gone over, and perhaps more, showing that Beijing compromised U.S. voter data, and the CIA was aware about it, but they didn't share the information with Trump during his first term because, let's be honest, they are the deep state. So we are expecting President Trump to touch on this information and evidence that has, up until this point, largely been unreported. Yes, I've reported on it here. Yes, it's being reported in Just the News. Yes, it's being reported in the Gateway Pundit. But on a wide scale, this information is unknown to the majority of Americans. The allegations that Beijing compromised U.S. voter data comes in the form of injected the injected voters that have been registered and then put into the system, which, of course, as I've always contended, would explain for the massive influx of ballots. When you have organizations like ERIC watching the live vote counts coming in, and then you have a place like Wisconsin, which suddenly had all of the ballots that were necessary to basically hand the win to Joe Biden, or the same thing happening in Georgia, those ballots, or those electronic records more likely, have got to come from someplace else. The audience for this speech is going to be the members of President Trump's cabinets. We're going to have all of those heads that I mentioned. Hopefully there will be other agency heads that will be on hand as well. The White House has been asked for comment by mainstream media reporters, and Caroline Leavitt, who just returned to the White House today, said, as usual, anonymous sources are speculating about what President Trump will say during his speech on Thursday evening. But the truth is, nobody knows yet what President Trump will ultimately say, which is why everyone should tune in. Now, a White House task force is looking to be releasing classified intelligence documents related to the 2020 election. At a very minimum, I think we're going to get the reports on those efforts of China and perhaps other countries like Ukraine, which could be coming out. These are reports that I believe were being worked on by Tulsi Gabbard. Remember, she had seized voting machines, or maybe not seized, taken possession of voting machines, not only from Fulton County, Georgia, but also the Philippines, where we know that there were efforts to steal the election on numerous different occasions. So we are going to have a wonderful time watching President Trump tonight because, yeah, although I think I know what he's going to talk about, I'm hoping he's going to talk about that and a whole hell of a lot more. So make sure you join me and JR here tonight on this channel at 8:45 p.m. We are going to be doing a 15-minute pre-show, and then we will broadcast in its entirety President Trump's address to the nation. I hope you can join me there. All right, let me say thank you very much to Filter Dog, who gave me a tweet from J.D. Vance, or a tweet featuring J.D. Vance. Let me get that pulled up here. Thank you, Filter Dog. Okay, J.D. Vance confirms even if the Save America Act is to be passed, it will be too late to be implemented by the midterms. Democrats will still likely be able to flood states with infinite mail-in ballots and no proof of citizenship or ID. Even if, he said this on July 15th, which was yesterday, even if it were passed tomorrow, there's not enough time for it to be implemented before voting starts for the November midterms. You're right, the elections, in some ways, the process is already getting started for 2026. The reason it won't be able to be implemented is there isn't enough time to update systems to go through everything, allegedly. Real-world rollout involves updating voter registration systems, training poll workers, processing new proofs for millions of voters, handling provisional ballots, revising forms, and dealing with legal challenges, so it'll take a lot more. It's almost like the Republican Party should have passed this the first month we elected them, majority, everything, and not waited until months before the midterm to try to pass it. Well, I can't argue with that. Let's hear exactly what JD said.
You mentioned that the administration's top priority right now is passing the Save America Act. Even if it were passed tomorrow, there's not enough time for it to be implemented before voting starts for the November midterm elections. That being said, will the administration support the results of the midterm elections come November, regardless of what they look like?
Well, look, of course we're going to support the results of the midterm elections. We think we're going to win, but ultimately that's up to the American people. But we also think we have to do everything that we can to discourage cheating. Because you will hear...
Okay, so, just countering this, let's think about what Harmeet Dillon and the DOJ sent out recently, putting all of those Secretary of States on notice. If they believe that they're going to be unable to get these illegals and these dead people off of the voter rolls, and they're going to be watching those states specifically to see if the Secretary of States allow those people to process ballots, then they're putting them into a trap, basically. They're backing them into a corner and daring them to do what they've done previously, which, in effect, doesn't really matter if the Save America Act passes or not. And like I said before, the Save America Act is not going to fix elections. Will it help? Yes, it will absolutely help. But there are so many other methodologies that exist that we've spoken about over the years, which are still in play in a good number of these Democrat-controlled areas. I think that ultimately it's going to come down to these people cheating and the administration catching them and then that putting people in jail.
Democrats sometimes say, and I love this line, I can't help but laugh at it, cheating isn't that frequent in American elections. Any frequency at all is a problem. A single ballot cast illegally in an American election is in fact the theft of the ballot from another American citizen, from an American citizen who deserves to be able to vote. So you're right, you know, the elections in some ways, the process is already getting started for 2026, but you don't pass a piece of legislation because you think you're going to immediately benefit from it. You pass a piece of legislation because you think the American people are going to benefit from it over the long haul. We have to do it. Save America is not mainly about 2026, to your question. It's actually about saving America's elections well into the future.
Okay. So, again, this is just like Congress passing this pact to cooperate in terms of technology and intelligence with the Israeli military. At this point, there ain't shit that we can do about it. The only thing that we can hope is that there is something that the president is planning on doing tonight, which is going to help us safeguard elections both for the midterms and then into the future. Because if they allow this to happen and they just choose to do nothing about it, then I think everybody knows that it's going to be disastrous. And I don't believe that the president would allow that to happen. Now, also, on the note of election security, I meant to talk about this yesterday, didn't get a chance, but Judicial Watch has been suing the state of California. We've spoken about this before. There is nearly 1 million voters on the voter rolls in California that should not be on there. And the suit by Judicial Watch aims to remove 873,092 inactive voter registrations. That would be 326,808 inactive through the past 3 federal elections, 151,202 inactive through the last 4 federal elections, and 33,922 inactive through the last 5 or more federal elections. Now, the reason this is notable is because the Department of Justice has actually joined this lawsuit in the help in efforts to help Judicial Watch get these voters off the voter rolls. I believe they're going to be successful because Judicial Watch has been successful in every state where they've challenged inactive voters. This is the job of the secretaries of state, and there's a reason that they keep them on the voter rolls, because they know that they can use them to cheat in the future. Filter Dog also says ABC and NBC are refusing to carry President Trump's 9 p.m. primetime White House address on election integrity out of panic. I agree with you. And will instead play it on their Live Now streams with far less viewers. The networks are terrified. I would argue that there are going to be far more people watching this online. And if ABC and NBC don't play it, I think people are probably going to tune in and watch it in whatever form they can, which is obviously just going to take away from their already paltry ratings. The people who perhaps watch NBC or ABC who would not watch, they're not going to watch anyways. There's going to be always a contingent of left-wing voters who hate President Trump and are just so afflicted with TDS that they wouldn't have tuned in anyways. This is largely going to be for the average normie American, low information, low participation voter. Sean Joe, thank you for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 cookies. Thank you very much. I do appreciate you, son. All right. Now, and still on the topic of election security, as I said, Caroline Leavitt has returned to the White House. She was questioned by Caitlin Collins about why no one has been charged over election interference, and she seemed to indicate that if you want to hear about people getting charged for election interference, you should probably tune in to the president's address tonight. Let's take a listen.
Caroline, sure. Regarding the president's speech tonight, he's been in office over 540 days now. If what he says is tonight is backed up by evidence, why hasn't anyone been charged?
Well, he hasn't revealed it yet. He hasn't declassified the documents yet, and you will see what he says tonight, and then we'll move forward appropriately from there.
Tonight from the Justice Department?
I don't speak on behalf of the Justice Department, Caitlin. You know that. Rachel.
By evidence, will there be charges?
You'll have to ask the Justice Department. I don't charge people. I just speak on behalf of the president. Rachel.
Thanks, Caroline. Welcome back.
Caitlin, you ignorant slut. You're going to have to tune in to the president's address tonight if you want to see what exactly the president is going to be revealing. So, yes, I believe that everybody will be watching online. NBC and ABC already have shite ratings. People don't watch them anyways. So, yeah, we're going to just tune in as we normally would. Oh, a couple more thank yous over here on Rumble. Chafed Bum says he is going to declare martial law because of all of the illegal aliens. Hey, I would be totally down with that as well. Principal Enigma says, I truly hope POTUS revisits JFK's speech about secret societies. The CIA has been a cesspool of sedition for decades. It's time to flush out the toilet of forgotten history. I don't know if he will specifically invoke that speech, but I do think that there will be a fair amount of ire directed at the old CIA. Because, of course, John Ratcliffe leading them now, they have a different mission and a different culture that's going on there. Now, continuing on the subject of election security, also on Joe Rogan's podcast yesterday, J.D. Vance and he discussed the stolen election in the Los Angeles mayor's race. And it was pretty clear that they both believe that election was a total sham, which, of course, I always love to hear that when we're talking about people at the level of a J.D. Vance. Let's take a listen.
First of all, what happened with the last election in Los Angeles, just the primary, I think was
crazy.
So super sus.
Yes,
and
it
here's
is.
why it's super sus. Not just super sus that Spencer Pratt, who was in second place, got overtaken by Nithya Raman in the mail-in ballots, but that the mail-in ballots also passed a tax hike. The people voted to pay more taxes.
Yep.
In a state where you have the highest
taxes. That's right.
They're like, we don't pay enough. That is insane. Then when you have direct evidence that they were recruiting homeless people.
That's right.
And they were getting homeless people and giving them cigarettes and cash. There's evidence of this. To use their address and mail-in ballots.
Yeah, I would be the Californian Joe who wakes up in the morning and says, you know what? I'm going to go and vote for higher taxes.
I don't pay enough.
I don't pay enough taxes.
I feel like we could fix this if I just pay 5%
more taxes. The crazy thing about it, too, is it's that, okay, so after the initial ballots all came in, it was Karen Bass was number one, Spencer Pratt was right behind her, and then number three, whatever this woman's name is, Nithya Raman. Okay, so you would expect the mail-in ballots to be more or less like the original ballots in terms of 1, 2, and 3. I'm not saying Spencer Pratt's going to win the mail-in ballots, but it just so happened that the third place person in relative terms did a lot better than the first and second place person.
Disproportionately better.
Such that the Republican was actually kicked out of the race so that there's not actually a real election in California. That, to me, was the crazy part. It's like you were designing the vote share in order to kick Pratt out and put the third person into second place. That, to me, is like very, very bizarre.
Yeah, very, very obvious. This is what they do in California every single time. Artsy Jones says, did you watch the Rubio conference this morning? I think it was a preview of tonight's speech. Steve Miller and Scott Bessent were fire. I played a couple of clips from it when we started the show. I did not see the entire thing, but yes, I saw Marco Rubio discussing the rise or the continuation of radical left-wing terrorism both here and abroad. Another thing that he said was that they will be revoking and denying visas to any foreigner who is a member of a far-left terror group. So if you are allied with leftists and you live someplace else, if you have previously financially supported Antifa in any way, you will not be able to travel to the United States. That certainly is going to be helpful as well. All right, now let's move on here to a little bit of fraud news. It's really unfortunate, but some people just simply cannot seem to keep their hands out of the cookie jar. Now, before we go into that, I do want to ask everybody to please, once again, hit that like button. It would be very, very helpful. You can also help us out by sharing the show. And let me say, please, thank you very much for the sponsor of this next segment of the program, which is going to be my friends over at Neutronics Labs. And you can check them out by heading to neutronicslabs.com/red pill and pick up a bottle of their Man's Edge testosterone booster product. You can get 50% off if you sign up for AutoShip, because with Man's Edge, you guys are going to unlock your body's natural ability to increase your testosterone levels. It's specifically designed for men who want to improve their health, their vitality, and their overall performance. You can enhance your muscle growth, boost your energy levels, support stamina, and achieve optimal well-being. It's also packed with 2,500 nanograms of IGF-1 and a potent blend of all natural ingredients, which are designed to optimize your body's natural ability to produce testosterone. If you use the code REDPILL, you will also get an additional 10% off your order. Now, they also have products for women and a whole host of other products, and you can check all of them out, and you will get special deals on them through this link, neutronicslabs.com/RedPill. Thank you very much to Neutronics Labs for sponsoring the program, and let us talk about some fraud. All right, so it would appear that President Trump's longtime White House teleprompter operator has just been suspended because there are allegations that this individual was profiting off of knowing President Trump's speeches ahead of time. What they would do, and we've seen a lot of this recently, where people are going to the prediction markets and then they are betting on things that are likely or not likely to happen. So this technical assistant has been operating President Trump's teleprompter personally since his initial historic 2016 campaign. And it's really sad to see them suspended after allegedly running this lucrative insider trading scheme. Federal regulators are reportedly in settlement talks with the man. His name is Gabe Perez. These allegations say that he pocketed more than $100,000 on the prediction market Kalshi. Now, it looks like ABC News first broke this story, and they said that Perez used his high-level security clearance and direct access to President Trump's speeches and the drafts of his speech to make wagers on Kalshi's highly popular mentions market. So this particular prediction market allows users to bet on whether or not a specific word or phrase like rigged election or fake news or a geopolitical term is going to be spoken aloud by the president during a public address. Obviously, with Gabe having access to President Trump's speeches ahead of time, he could place a large wager on whether or not President Trump is going to say fake news or Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon or something like that. And then he would win a whole bunch of money. So he loaded these speeches onto the teleprompter himself. In that way, he would allegedly know exactly what the president was going to be talking about before the rest of the world would have the ability to actually hear the words come out of his mouth. So sources familiar with the matter say that investigators uncovered these instances where Perez allegedly backed out of bets mid-speech after President Trump just skipped a section that contained a word Perez had already made a wager around. This is the thing about President Trump. He may have a speech that's been written, but I think all of us know that he does like to go off the script and go by the seat of his pants on certain occasions. So, according to sources, Kalshi alerted their regulator, the Commodity Futures Trading Commission, the CFTC, to this suspicious activity on their mentions market where users can bet on these specific words, phrases, or topics that the president would mention. Our surveillance team promptly flagged and referred these trades to the CFTC, and we are cooperating and assisting with regulators, the lawyer for Kalshi said, Bobby Denault. Now, according to other people familiar with the matter, Perez sat down for an interview with regulators in recent months. He acknowledged some of the trades. At some point during the investigation, the sources said that the CFTC alerted federal prosecutors in Manhattan. They have declined to open a criminal investigation. Regulators at the CFTC have expressed a willingness to settle with Perez, and they've discussed terms with him that would require Perez to give back his profits and refrain from making similar trades. Of course, he's also no longer going to be working as the White House teleprompter operator. The White House has emphasized that employees are prohibited from using non-public information for personal financial gain and reiterated that all staff are expected to comply with strict ethics rules. It's a bad look on the White House. White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt also confirmed earlier today that President Trump has been personally briefed on the matter. Obviously, I'm aware of the report, she said. The president is too. I spoke with him about it. He believes it's deeply unfortunate, and frankly, it's a disgrace. Leavitt also added that Perez is, of course, cooperating with the CFTC investigation. He's placed on administrative leave without pay pending the outcome. The individual that was cited in the report is complying, and he's been put on an administrative leave. So there will be a teleprompter operator tonight, of course, but it will not be the one, unfortunately, in that story. Thank you very much to, Artsy Joan. I already read that one. Okay, now also, the leak investigation that we spoke about earlier in the week, the potential canary trap that the Trump admin set for people inside the White House appears to be heating up. Subpoenas have gone out to the journalists who wrote that story about the new Air Force One that was gifted to the United States from Qatar. Remember, they said that according to sources inside the White House, this version of Air Force One does not have anti-aircraft missile capability, which is totally false. That's why I think this was a canary trap that was set. But now, officials in the White House, in an effort to find out who it was that spoke with these reporters, have been asked to turn over their phones in this investigation. They are serious about this leak regarding Air Force One and its security while the president is traveling abroad. Now, if you'll remember, President Trump had announced that the Air Force One jet that he flew into Ankara, Turkey on for the NATO summit last week would be visiting a base in the UK. And then he went on to fly on a different Air Force One plane when he departed from Turkey on Wednesday night, which gave a number of people speculation about whether or not there were security concerns. Of course, those security concerns seem to be backed up when, I believe it was the New York Times, reported on these supposed deficits that the new Air Force One plane has. President Trump told reporters numerous times during that NATO summit that Iran is planning to assassinate him and that he's the number one on their kill list. But he also shrugged off security concerns when asked if that's the reason the new Air Force One plane was rerouted. Of course, he didn't confirm and he didn't deny. After flying out of Turkey and across the Middle East on the old jet, President Trump boarded his newer luxury plane donated by Qatar at Mildenhall Air Force Base in the UK. President Trump was then pressed again about security concerns and why reporters had been directed to keep their window shades down while flying from Turkey to the UK. And he hilariously said, "I'm number one on their list before you, but if I go, you go too. So perhaps someday you want to change professions." That's pretty funny. If you'll remember also, during the octagon fight on the front lawn of the White House, Dana White had been informed about the potential terror attack that was being planned by some Americans led by an illegal alien. And he said to President Trump, "I hope we don't die in a terror attack." And President Trump looked at him and said, "We all got to go sometime." Totally blasé about the whole thing. Just waiting to get past this commercial. Okay, here is President Trump on Air Force One telling reporters that if he dies, so do they.
It's a long walk to you. It's about 3 times the walk we used to take, right? I hope you like it. So we had a very good day, very good 2 days, and a lot of things were determined. And what was really determined is the country's doing very well. We've made a lot of good trade deals with Turkey, and they've been a very good partner. He's been great, by the way. President Erdogan's been great, and I hope you had a good time. Any questions?
Mr. President, what was the security concern that caused us to change planes? What was the security concern that caused us to change planes?
We sent this one in so that the Air Force Base here was in the same exact line. So you saw, did you see the picture?
We did.
Hundreds of pictures, hundreds of people. Let me see that. Oh, yeah. You can't see it too well, but there are hundreds of people out there. So they wanted to see, so they came a little bit early and we switched planes.
So you're saying there wasn't a security concern?
No. Why would there?
Yeah, the idea that they would put this new Air Force One up in the air with the president on it without all of the requisite security features that every other Air Force One has is totally ridiculous. There are stipulations about what an Air Force One plane is. And those security features are probably number one among them. If you guys will remember, when this plane was gifted to the United States, there was a very public retrofitting process to get it certified to even be a version of Air Force One. It's a lot more than just the paint job they slap on the outside.
No, except we sent it a little early. Same line going back. We sent it a little bit early so that we could let them see it. The whole base came out and saw the plane, and then we landed.
Do you know why they had us close our window blinds? That was not usual.
Well, yeah, because you're, probably on a dangerous flight because of the sleaze bags that we have to deal with.
So you think that Iran was possibly thinking of targeting?
Well, I mean, if they asked you to close your windows, probably they'd feel that way. They didn't ask me to close mine, but if they did, I would have done it. No, these are sick people, so I could see something like that. I didn't know they did that, but I could see something like that.
Were you aware of any credible threat by Iran against Air Force One?
I have a threat all the time. I'm number one on their list before you. But if I go, you go. So perhaps someday you want to change professions.
I love President Trump. He's so great. All right. So we are looking forward to this investigation because White House officials are officially under scrutiny. There's no way that this could have come from anybody else. Several officials within the White House, top-level staff, people that are close to the president, have been asked to provide their phones to investigators at the direction of White House Chief of Staff and Counsel Susie Wiles, as well as the FBI director, of course, that being Kash Patel. Patel and Wiles were reportedly in the West Wing, the White House, for roughly 7 hours on Friday. Patel was diverted from traveling to Chicago, and they were apparently establishing a war room, most likely bringing in members of the White House staff to interview them directly. According to a report, as the investigation unfolded, at least one federal agency emailed their employees warning that if they were contacted by outside agencies requesting information and devices, they needed to immediately contact their own agency's attorneys. That is more than just a little suspicious. I wonder which federal agency might have directed their employees to not immediately comply with this White House investigation. The report further notes investigators are also seeking information from officials who traveled to Turkey with the president or who had any role in the trip, but not all officials have complied with the request to turn over their devices. You got to wonder what kind of sick stuff are on those phones and why they wouldn't want them turned in. Now, speaking of frauds, if you'll remember, Chuck Schumer busted gas on the floor of the Senate this week, and TMZ asked him on the steps of the Senate office building if he farted on the Senate floor.
Senator.
Invalidate the election certificates of Senator Ossoff and Senator Warnock.
Senator Jacob with TMZ, did you fart yesterday on the Senate floor?
No answer from Chuck Schumer on that, but he definitely farted on the Senate floor. Artsy Jones says, didn't Tulsi find 30,000 fake ballots in Georgia? And something about Eric Coomer. So there were 27,000 missing ballots from Georgia. That was part of a different investigation. I don't know about Tulsi Gabbard finding those because she hasn't released, or she didn't before she left the DNI. She didn't release her ultimate report on election fraud. I believe that is going to be coming out through Bill Pulte. But yeah, Eric Coomer was the so-called architect of Dominion machines and COVID in advance to secure machine use in drop boxes. He was in charge of the programming on the machines themselves, and he was quoted allegedly as having said on a Antifa Zoom call that nobody needed to worry about President Trump winning the 2020 election because he had fixed it to say that he wouldn't. Now, charges against Eric Coomer would be absolute, like top of my wish list if we can get that to happen. Also, speaking of frauds, a former Federal Reserve advisor was just sentenced to 38 months in prison. If you'll remember, he had lied about sharing restricted information with suspected Chinese intelligence operatives. His name was John Harold Rogers. Mr. Rogers is 64, and he was just sentenced today to that 38 months in prison. Now, according to the U.S. Attorney's Office for the District of Columbia, Rogers was sentenced in connection with making false statements to federal investigators about the fact that he had shared restricted Federal Reserve information with Chinese intelligence operatives. Obviously, giving that information to Chinese operatives allowed China to structure their own financial markets to take advantage of information they knew was going to be coming down the line. So as previously reported, Rogers was arrested and indicted in late January 2025. He was a longtime Fed economist, and during that experience of the many years that he worked there, he exploited his position of trust. He worked as a senior advisor in the Federal Reserve Board of Governors Division of International Finance for 11 years, from 2010 until his retirement in 2021. He had access to some highly sensitive non-public information, including proprietary economic data sets, deliberations on tariffs, which of course would target China, briefing books for Fed governors, and critical insights into upcoming Federal Open Market Committee decisions and interest rates move. Prosecutors allege beginning as early as 2018, Rogers passed this information to co-conspirators that were tied directly to the People's Republic of China's intelligence and security apparatus. These individuals posed as graduate students at a PRC university. They lured Rogers with gifts, an all-expenses-paid beach vacation, and a lucrative part-time professor position at Fudan University in Shanghai, where he was paid approximately $450,000 in 2023 alone. That stolen data could have allowed China to manipulate U.S. markets in a manner similar to insider trading, which would give Beijing massive advantages when buying or selling U.S. bonds and securities with advanced knowledge of policy shifts that were going to be taking place at the Fed. In February 2020, when questioned by the Federal Reserve Board of Governors Office of Inspector General, Rogers, of course, lied about accessing and passing that sensitive information and about his associations with his Chinese contacts. During the trial, which took place in February of this year, jurors declined to convict Rogers on the more serious economic espionage conspiracy count, which I find to be, of course, staggering. But this is Washington, D.C., and the people on that jury were, of course, members of the deep state. They did, however, find beyond a reasonable doubt that Rogers lied when questioned by federal investigators. He falsely denied he had shared anything restricted from the Federal Reserve information outside of the institution. On the Wednesday sentencing, U.S. District Judge Dabney Feindrich emphasized Rogers' deliberate efforts to conceal his conduct, including using personal email accounts and taking steps to hide his communications. Rogers continued to maintain he never knew he was working for Chinese intelligence, and he insisted he had simply been manipulated. But the court concluded his false statements warranted a significant prison sentence. So he will be released after 38 months, serve 12 months of supervised release, and that is not as much as federal prosecutors were requesting. They wanted him to serve a 60-month prison term. Michael Horowitz, the inspector general who uncovered all of this, said Rogers deliberately lied to our investigators to conceal the fact he shared restricted, non-public Federal Reserve information with intelligence agents working for China. Today's sentencing sends a clear message that those who mislead and obstruct federal agents will be brought to justice. I commend the U.S. Attorney's Office, our agents, and our federal law enforcement partners for their hard work and persistence, which led to this result. While holding a position of public trust, Rogers repeatedly violated Federal Reserve information security policies by taking sensitive, non-public information and sending it to himself while he was in China and to others affiliated with the Chinese Communist Party. He then lied to federal agents about these disclosures. His sentencing underscores the shared commitment of the FBI and the Federal Reserve to pursue anyone who endangers U.S. economic and national security by passing confidential information to an adversarial government. Now, also a fraudster at work, former Democratic representative and current congressional candidate Cori Bush is under investigation by the Missouri Attorney General for allegedly funneling charity donations from a devastating tornado and her nonprofit and using it for political spending. Here is Cori Bush being confronted about this investigation and the money she allegedly stole.
She really does use that word a lot. A leadership PAC, an action PAC. And now, Politivist Power Inc., which Bush called in her own fundraising emails a 501c4, a nonprofit, not political. Except the records show money going from that nonprofit into the PAC that pays her and her husband. And one of those nonprofit emails asked people to, quote, donate to our tornado fund. The campaign stopped Monday morning. I repeated questions we already sent her campaign in writing 6 days earlier.
How much did you take in, and where did it go?
You know what? You have been told multiple times that that is a PAC that I cannot speak to as a candidate.
Her fundraising emails include this disclaimer, telling donors the PAC and the nonprofit are not affiliated.
I'm sorry for the confusion. This was not about the PAC. This was actually about the you called it a 501c4 in emails and said it was a charity?
I cannot speak to. I can speak to what I just did. That's what I can speak to.
Just to clarify, this question is about Politivist Power Inc.
Mr. Maxwell. You have been instructed already.
So we moved on. 10 minutes and several questions later, I tried again for an answer. Bush's campaign manager, Stephanie Rose Spalding, whose name also appears on the PAC payroll, shut it down.
Congressman, can you please clarify?
Can we have a question from someone who has not asked the question?
Here's the part that might surprise you. A lot of this is probably legal. We took it all to someone who does this for a living.
One of the biggest issues with 501c4 nonprofits, which are not technically supposed to exist for political purposes, they don't have to disclose their donors. They don't have to disclose much spending.
So when Bush says this,
and we'll do it with no dirty money.
Important to note, part of her own money trail hits a wall, and not by accident. That's how these groups are built to work.
What it ultimately means is the money is going to a 501c4 nonprofit that is not legally required to disclose its donors to the Federal Election Commission.
And yes, we've dug into the outside money helping Wesley Bell too, and we've reported it. The difference now is that Bell's donors are public. This trail is not. The candidate who runs on honesty,
shouldn't you be able to run on the truth?
Still owes this district some answers about the web of committees she controls and where the money lands. We did send the questions once more in writing after the event today. Tonight, the campaign says it's still not really sure what we're asking and that, hey, we're already past the deadline. All right, fine. Here's the short list of what we still don't know. How much she raised on that tornado fund, she won't tell us. How much reached actual relief for tornado victims, there's no paperwork that we've seen yet. Who the donors are, the law doesn't make her tell us that part. And what she's doing in that role with that group now that she's running for Congress, no answer on that part.
Well. Perhaps the Missouri Attorney General will be able to help us get to the bottom of all of those pesky questions. Cori Bush, in my opinion, is a fraudster. Cori Bush, I'm very, very, very hopeful is going to be brought up on charges. There is nothing more disgusting than the nonprofit scamming of individuals taking money that is meant to offer relief to people. This is like Hillary Clinton and Haiti all over again. Speaking of fraudsters, a Texas mayor was just arrested and charged with 5 felonies. This is Houston area Mayor Arcola Fred Burton. Houston area Arcola Mayor Fred Burton. He was charged with illegal voting, fraud, tampering with government records, and misuse of official information. Now, the illegal voting charges stem from 2 separate elections. We had the Arcola municipal runoff election, which took place in June of 2025, and then the city of Arcola special election in April of 2026. Now, according to grand jury indictments, Burton is accused of helping, encouraging, and failing to prevent 3 people from voting when he knew they were ineligible to do so. The 3 remaining charges against Burton go all the way back to 2023. So, in the illegal voting charges, Burton is accused of telling at least 3 people to vote in a runoff election when he knew they could not legally do so. In the misuse of official information charge, Burton is accused of using insider information to effect a $15,000 City of Arcola contract bid. In the tampering with government records charge, he's accused of presenting a fake estimate to defraud the City of Arcola back in 2023. Now, the fraud charge, also stemming from that incident in 2023, alleges that Burton got some council members to sign off on 2 checks with a combined value between $30,000 and $150,000. And in case you're wondering, Mr. Burton is a Democrat. Let's take a look at the local Houston coverage.
Well, the mayor of Arcola in Fort Bend County is facing multiple felony charges, and today he made his first appearance before a magistrate judge.
Fred Anthony Burton is accused of a series of alleged crimes tied to his time in office, and that does include illegal voting, tampering with government records, misuse of official information, and fraud. Fox 26's reporter Leslie Delaspore is live at Arcola City Hall with more on these allegations. Leslie.
Yeah, that's right. So I can tell you today we've gotten some mixed reaction from people here in Arcola. But I also want to let you know that investigators say these allegations span back several years. We're going to break it down for you. So here's what we know so far. According to court records, Fred Burton was arrested Wednesday and booked into the Fort Bend County Jail on 5 felony charges. Those charges include 2 counts of illegal voting, 1 count of misuse of official information, 1 count of tampering with a government record, and 1 count of fraudulent securing of document execution. Now, the indictments allege Burton knowingly encouraged or attempted to help people vote in Arcola elections when they were allegedly not able to cast ballots. Prosecutors also accused Burton of using non-public information he was able to get as mayor to benefit another person in connection with the city contract. In a separate indictment, Burton is accused of presenting or using fake government records related to an estimate for the Arcola Food Court project. Another charge alleges he caused city council members to sign documents affecting the city's financial interests without their consent. Now, we also heard from residents that the current Arcola City Council member, Alexis Burton, at-large position 2, is Fred Burton's daughter. Now, Fox 26 reached out to the Arcola City Council as well as the Arcola Police Department for comment, but we haven't heard back yet at the time of this report. And we also spoke with a few people today about the news of Burton's arrest, including one resident who has lived here for about 50 years and didn't want to be identified. The long-term resident told us there had been previous disputes involving Burton, former Mayor Vita Williams, and former City Council member Ebony Sanko, adding they didn't have much insight into those issues, but they were shocked by the arrest.
Small town politics, you know, you run the family, you know, you run the town. Always been issues in the local government. He wanted it done Fred's way and no other way. The things that they talk about, the way the government is run. We had a previous mayor that in the middle of a council meeting said that this is my town and I will run it the way I want to. There have been things that have been said by other residents about this man previously, that he was a crook and he was crooked. And the food court, he funneled some money from the food court into his own pocket. And we do know some of the election fund that's gone on with picking up residents and bringing them in to vote. Go to meetings. People need to show up and vote. And, you know, if you have questions or concerns, take it to City Council. Ask to speak to the council and or the mayor, the chief of police, because they are here to serve you.
Now, we do want to point out that Burton has held an office here at Arcola City Hall for quite some time, starting in 2018. So we made a timeline for you so you could get a good understanding of it. So he was first elected mayor in 2018, re-elected in 2020 and 2022, lost his re-election bid in 2024, and was elected to the Arcola City Council at large position 5 in 2025, then returned to the mayor's office after winning the recent May 2026 election. Reporting live in Arcola, Leslie Delaspore.
Why is it that there are so many Democrat thugs who are criminals and fraudsters? It just seems to happen over and over and over again. All right, well, a couple of final quick pieces here. In Seattle, this is one of the locations where members of Congress have effectively blocked President Trump from being able to have his picks appointed. And in the U.S. Attorney's Office, this is one of those offices. Now, as you are aware, the blue slip process, if there's a Democrat senator who throws a blue slip and says, I will not allow President Trump to appoint this person, then he doesn't get to choose who he wants. And basically, the position stays open until such time as the Democrat says who they're willing to support in that position. Well, in the case of Seattle, because there hasn't been a U.S. attorney for essentially the entirety of the Trump administration, federal judges appointed their own U.S. attorney. This has happened in a number of different locations around the country. And the person that they blocked was Neil Floyd. The person that they appointed, Democrat Roger Rajoff. Now, he showed up this week at 8 a.m. to take over the office. Within 30 minutes, the White House called him and told him that he was fired. So right now, there is no official confirmed U.S. attorney, but Neil Floyd is acting as the de facto U.S. attorney, I suppose, in an interim position, because, of course, this is how these people play the game, and John Thune refuses to allow President Trump to get his recess appointments. Yesterday, finally, the Senate held an anti-taxpayer fraud meeting with Nick Shirley and James O'Keefe. The reason I didn't play any clips from it is because largely it was a series of items that we already knew about. We've already gone over all of the efforts in the city of Los Angeles, committing fraud, fraudulent voting, packing the voter rolls, using voters' names and information. We already know all that. We already know about all of the Medicare fraud and the daycare fraud that we've seen in New York, in Maine, in Ohio, in Minnesota. It's just the same information over and over and over again. What is shocking about this hearing that was held yesterday is that, I'm sure you're aware, the committees are made up of half Democrats and half Republicans. All the Republicans showed up, and every single Democrat refused to show up, essentially broadcasting to the world that they are in favor of the American people and the U.S. government being defrauded by all of these people who, frankly, make up their voter base. Absolutely disgusting. Not at all surprising. Thank you so much to, let's see, Principal Enigma. He says, just to be clear, Boeing gifted the new Air Force One to the U.S., not Qatar. Is that correct? No. That was Qatar that gifted the U.S. the new Air Force One because the United States had orders with Boeing to produce new Air Force Ones, and they had not finished, and they were way, way behind schedule and over budget. President Trump had made a deal with Boeing for a lower price because the Obama administration, or maybe it was the Biden administration, had signed a deal that was, overinflated. And because we needed a new Air Force One, Qatar gifted America with this Boeing 737, which was then converted into an Air Force One. As far as I know, Boeing still has yet to deliver on the Air Force Ones that they were supposed to have given us some time ago. Jim Kyle says, did you see the former owner of Overstock lost a defamation case to Hunter Biden? Yes, Patrick Byrne lost his defamation case to Hunter Biden. I believe we spoke about that on Monday. And, of course, Patrick Byrne is going to appeal that ruling. Berkey says, Zach, your laugh cracks me up. Good. I'm glad I can bring a little bit of joy into your world in the midst of all of this craziness. Denise Ann says, but elections are safe and nobody would fraudulently vote in them. That's what they would have us believe, isn't it, Denise? All righty. Okay, you guys, please join me here at 8:45 Eastern. Me and JR are going to be streaming President Trump's election address in its entirety. As soon as I get done with this stream, I am going to create the new stream, so look for a post or just come on back to the channel at 8:45, and you should see it smack dab right up in the middle of the page. Thank you, everybody. Oh, wait, I have to finish the... Actually, there are no more pills. So thank you to everybody on Pilled. Thank you to everybody on every platform. Good luck. God bless. I'll see you tonight for President Trump's Oval Office address. Peace. Don't forget to hit the like button on your way out.